Alright, let me try and take some time to explain myself and why I make YouTube videos about the subject that I do. Tomorrow, more than likely, that thing's going to get shut off. But I'm not really that worried about it because I'm kind of set up to deal with it. The van's got a power inverter in it that can run a few things, but not as much as I might like. But it'll keep the phone charged and a couple other things going as long as I can keep up with everything. I didn't pay anyone to do any of this stuff. I did it all myself, using whatever I could, however I could, for whatever I wanted or needed it for. And I did the same exact thing with that thing, with that thing, and now, seeing as how I've found myself in this situation, I'm going to have to do the same with this thing. The old generator runs, but it isn't putting out any power, so I have to figure out what's wrong with it. Because it sure would be nice to have the pump work and the refrigerator stay running and so forth and so on. But in order to diagnose and fix this thing, which runs but doesn't put out any power, I have to make my own tools or salvage my own tools to test, diagnose, and hopefully fix it. And in order to do that, I need an ohm meter. But I had one problem. Some dog who will remain nameless decided to eat the leads. Ain't that right? Nameless. I could just go out and buy another one. This particular version of ohm meter is relatively inexpensive. But just because I can, I decided to make new leads. Using whatever I could, however I could, to make it into what I needed it to be. Problem number one, the wires were chewed so close to the post that I had to cut everything back enough to expose the wire so that I could make a connection. And seeing as how the wire is so thin, I had to come up with a way to stiffen it up so that it wouldn't fatigue off right away and might actually last a little while. The wires have to be ultra thin because if they're too thick, it screws up your reading for your resistance. So I salvaged those out of what used to be an old computer. And to remake the probe, I snatched one of these pieces of steel out of this old electric fly swatter, stuck it in the end of the connector that used to slide into a slot in the computer. And seeing as how, if everything works out, I'll be dealing with some pretty high voltage by the time it's all said and done, everything has to be insulated. So I cut a pen in half, slid it over what I made the probes out of, and then fastened it all together so that it does what I need it to do. Come on. Making what I could out of whatever I can to function how I need it to work. I take stuff like this for granted because I've been doing it all my life. And just this way. And most people, based on my general experience with people over the years and machinery and problems in general that arise on a semi-regular basis or whatever, aren't prepared to think outside the box and do stuff like this. And should the world ever turn into a demolition derby, which is exactly what it will be like if the other side has its way, if for a short time or not, I know for a fact that I'll make it further than most. Maybe even potentially being able to drag a few people with me along the way. But I have this pet peeve, or personal shortcoming, I suppose you could say. There's nothing I hate more than to have to listen to people whine and complain about situations that they could have fixed themselves after the fact. Then I decided I better make some videos about how all this works and what potentially could be coming, because I don't want to freaking hear it. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. I'm not nearly as worried about this situation and its outcome as you should be. Because surviving requires being able to do shit like this on a regular basis. And like I said, I have this personal shortcoming. I hate hearing people piss and moan and whine and complain about situations that they could have fixed themselves before it actually becomes a situation. So here's probably the most important advice that I could give you at this time. Do something, anything. Talk to your friends, family, and neighbors. Share whatever information you can before the breakdown actually occurs. And you have to make something out of nothing on a daily basis. Or potentially end up dealing with someone like me who has no time and no patience to hear someone or a group of people complain about how the job is getting done, especially when they weren't prepared to do it themselves.